I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucer.
So they may be taken by a small craft up into the sky to a kind of mothership.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Hello, and welcome to Really with Tom and Dave. I'm Dave, and I think you can figure out the rest. That guy is
I'm the
Tom.
Tom part.
Tom.
Yeah, what a rousing intro.
There you go.
For me. But I'll take it.
Yeah.
How are you, buddy? It's good to see
very
you.
well. I'm very well. I'm in Toronto right now, my old hometown.
I like the blue shirt. I like the blue with your eyes.
Thank you. I'm trying to
fashion report.
I thought it would be good if I was dreamier in these things.
But your background is also sort of like there's a whole like wintry. I don't know. Is it wintry behind you? Even though it's summer,
it's coming. I guess it's just that mix of daylight and electric light that cinematographers hate.
It's wonderful. I'm moved by it.
But here we are in UFO world again.
We are in the UFO world, my friend.
And we have a guest because the UFO world seems to be like it's fraying at the edges right now. And you know what I mean? And I think we have a guest who is so knowledgeable about the history of the phenomena and has been in these on these battlefields for so long. But I'll let you explain who our wonderful guest is.
We have a fantastic guest, and it's just thrilling to be sort of back with you all with this guest. Richard Dolan is among the world's leading UFO historians. He's written many classics for the field, including UFOs and the National Security State, AD After Disclosure, and UFOs for the 21st Century Mind, as well as ongoing booklets for his Richard Dolan lecture series. Richard has lectured around the world and has appeared widely on television, including Ancient Aliens, Hangar One, and many documentaries. Currently, he is the writer and host of the series False Flags, which appears on Gaia TV, and he is also writing a book on the same subject. He also hosts 2 radio shows, The Richard Dolan Show on KGRA and The Eft Files, and is the publisher of Richard Dolan Press, which features the work of many leading thinkers exploring alternative realities in our world. And his recent book, A History of USOs, Unidentified Submerged Objects, Volume 1, from the beginning to 1969, is one of the things we want to talk to him about today. But we're just thrilled to have him back, a friend to the Really Pod, and we're thrilled to speak with him. Richard, there he is.
Hello, Richard.
There he is.
How are you doing?
I'm glad to be back with you both. It was fun last time. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it was delightful to see you again. Yeah,
we're thrilled to have you.
Yeah.
Dave says the UFO's world's fraying at the edges. What is
it? Am I wrong about this?
What is your take on that? That's a grim assessment.
I mean, it feels like I think part of what's making me feel this way is this the recent Ross Coulthart bombshell, which seems to be tearing the community apart.
Made the Tic Tac bombshell.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think about that. I had my own reaction, and I'm like, maybe they didn't.
But it feels like everyone's taking a side right now on that issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I don't know how we can resolve that one right now. I mean, for me, I'm torn because I would definitely recognize that there's been deep, secret, classified study of a lot of the tech related to the UFO subject for a long time. And I do think that there's probably been significant advances made in the classified world. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's just that the behavior of that thing strikes me as a little too provocative for it to be classified. And then also, the other thing is, I just keep thinking of the long, long history of violations of military airspace. I go back through the 21st century, through the 90s, through the 80s, through the 70s, and the 60s and 50s and 1940s. It's like, so when did we start building UFOs to just screw with our military? Like, are we doing this now for 80 plus years? and we're still no admission. It just seems a little strange to me. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but there are objects, playing games in U.S. airspace back in the 1940s, doing 9,000 miles per hour, according to declassified documents. So
It's
the
also,
real
yeah.
trick is like, when did this start?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to say this is, just speaking from the kind of audience perspective, but also like having read, even just reading your USO book, it's these are the same types of materials, technologies, the same types of speeds going back way. Even if they had, this is not a new phenomenon necessarily.
No, not. I mean, I don't know how ancient it actually is. We could talk about that perhaps, but it definitely goes back a while. And the thing is, even if it was, let's say the Tic Tac was built by Lockheed Martin, so then you have to ask, who signed off for those tests to be done during live military exercises without these pilots knowing about, whether anyone in the Navy knowing about it? Was the U.S. Navy involved? Who in the Navy signed off? It's like, these are reasonable questions to ask, and just to say, well, Lockheed made it, maybe that happened, but if so, it leads to a lot of other very, very difficult questions, it seems to me. So
yes, well, especially with the 2004 Tic Tac event, that's really, really close to 9/11 when that happened.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's hard to believe they would just mess with a aircraft carrier group's minds.
You really have to wonder, and the Navy was, I mean, first of all, the war in Afghanistan was happening. The war in Iraq was on at that point. So the U.S. was involved in two major wars around the world. The Nimitz carrier group was involved in serious military exercises in the early stages of the global war on terror. And they're going to test Tic Tac, hypersonic, anti-grav technology just to screw with Fravor and Alex Dietrich and all those pilots for 2 weeks.
It strains
Before
credulity.
that as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems like
and every single person from the military that I've talked to or that I've seen interviewed says the same thing: is that there are protocols that if you accidentally observe a black project, there are debriefing protocols that you immediately go through, and that no one went through anything like that.
Yeah. No. Right.
Was the Tic Tac? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The response to it, like, you had the guys in suits coming on, which a lot of the witnesses talked about, and that also is a standard protocol for genuine UFO encounters going back through the 50s and 1940s. This was happening. So,
was
yeah,
the Tic
I don't
Tac
know.
a
It
USO
looks like
in your opinion? Sorry.
No, what was your question, Tom?
Was the Tic Tac a USO in your opinion?
I don't know if the Tic Tac was a USO itself, but it, I think, was associated with an object that was probably a USO. I mean, you've had witnesses talking about a large object under the water at the same time that the Tic Tac was seen, and it seems to me at least a reasonable supposition that that underwater object was the main object of interest, to be honest. It seemed it was quite large from what at least some witnesses have said, and so I think that's a genuine potential USO, which I'm including in my third volume of my USO history.
Yes, which, my God. First of all, how do you know you're going to write 3 volumes? How do you, when you're starting, how do you know it's going to be 3?
No. At first I thought, actually, it was 3 years ago, I thought, oh, let's look into some of these USO reports because they're interesting. Like, they're always interesting. And I just thought, how many are there really? Like, I didn't know myself. And so I thought, I'm going to scour the web and just look for all the good cases I can find. I'll look through all of the old books and see what I can find. And then it just became a mania by the summer of 2022. And I thought, let's just see what I can write. So I quickly realized this is going to be more than one book. And I thought two volumes probably. But it was too much even for 2. So 3. But I wrote all the cases out, and I was hoping that I would have all 3 published even by this summer. But the fact is, the second volume will be out probably next month. I think August of 2025 is not impossible. It's basically done now. And then the third volume, maybe by the later part of this year, it should be ready to come out. All the cases are written. I've been saying this to everyone, but to make it into a nice book, I break it into chapters. I write introductions for each historical period, and we get the illustrations in there, so it takes a little bit of time.
Well, I'm a little ashamed to say that you can write these things faster than I can read them. So I've got a lot of work to do.
I've been very maniacal on this one for the last 3 years, I will say. I've been.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this
I've been using Speechify to listen to Volume 1 with Gwyneth Paltrow's voice reading it. So
she does a good job.
but it's your thoughts but coming through Gwyneth Paltrow's mouth. So
Well,
it's
that's
very
amazing.
interesting.
I paid a audiobook reader to do that damn book, but he's not going to sound as good as Paltrow.
No, I'm gonna get. I think I'm gonna go for the audiobook version because it's
It's a little insight into Dave's AI private life, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
but
Speechify
more
is
than we.
interesting. Yeah, but it's not really there. It's not really there yet. I don't think.
The thing I love about it is, first of all, like all the your research is so incredible. It's so thorough. It's so fascinating, and the cases are, and also the way you present. The information helps with credibility. You're helping the reader go along with like, okay, well, you can listen to this. This is probably more credible. These are the witnesses. You have a scale that is very kind of easy to understand of like, this is probably more likely to have happened. This is why I'm categorizing it as such. You mentioned something earlier, which I do think is a really interesting aspect of this. And I don't know if you discovered this as you went along or you knew this was your feeling going in, but the moment I started hearing about USOs or start picking up, you immediately start going to ancient aliens, right? You seem to go, oh, well, this is Atlantis. This is going to confirm, all these. That's not what your reporting and your research seems to be leading. You suggest this is more of a modern phenomenon. 'Cause you're starting kind of at the beginning of time, almost, recorded history. But as we see, it's probably the volume, is expanding towards our current time, and they get more voluminous. But yeah, tell me about that process for you and that sense of discovery.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tom. I want to be respectful here because I've seen in this community of ours the idea of ancient UFOs and the idea that we were genetically modified in the ancient past. These are very, very well entrenched ideas in our community, and I've entertained these ideas myself for many, many years. But the reality is, I'm a little more cold on them than I've ever been in the past. I've spent the last 5, 6, 7 years really looking into human past, prehistory, as much as possible, quite a lot, looking for a hole in our ancient history that makes me really grab onto a kind of a coherent ancient aliens thesis. And the truth is, I'm just not finding it. And I know there's a lot of people out there who do, and I respect them. But here's the thing. When I look at ancient UFO reports, whether aerial reports or water-based reports, there's some good studies on this. So I've mentioned many times I'm a big fan of the book Wonders in the Sky by Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck. And that is actually a genuinely great book. They have a lot of ancient accounts in there. And I think some of them are probably persuasive to me, and some are probably not that persuasive to me. But overall, what I find is, in terms of just quantity, I mean, I realize, okay, so the 20th and 21st century, we've got better technology, we've got better ability to see things and detect, but still, people in the ancient times lived outdoors. They were looking at the sky all the time. And you would go 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 years between some of these sightings. And yes, I know literacy was less in the ancient world. Yes, we all know that. But I don't really think that these aerial objects were part of the daily consciousness of people the way they became in the 20th century. And when I look at the number of reports, there seems to be two periods where they just exploded. One, I think, was during the 19th century, but then the main one was during and right after the Second World War. And it seems like, especially after World War II, like something flipped a switch. And we just started getting a lot of them. So I think something happened. And I'm not saying there was no ancient interaction, but like for me, look, if I want to understand this phenomenon, I don't want to base my beliefs on what I want to be true. I want to base my belief on what I think is true. And if I want to understand who these beings are, it makes a difference if one group has been here for 10,000 years or if they just got here 70 years ago. Like, there's a big difference in that. So I want to try to be accurate and rigorous. And I looked at some potentially ancient USO reports. The earliest one that I included as part of the genuine chronology was as late as 1707. But I did look at the Christopher Columbus one, which is an interesting case. And they did see something, kind of an unexplained light as Columbus's ship was approaching, less than 24 hours before they struck land, actually. Right. And, there's a couple of other ones that are potentially interesting, and I put them in the maybe pile, and I wrote a little bit about those. But I really think you start getting clear, undeniable cases really starting in the 18th century, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the sort of the parallels that Diana Pazolka is drawing between religious sort of miracle phenomenology and UFO encounters? Do you find any parallels there that are convincing to you?
There's an overlap in the area of human consciousness, I think. Like, I think that we interact with these beings in a way that affects our literal consciousness, our awareness. There's and when I think of spiritual phenomena, and also the fact that they seem to have some mastery over space and time in ways that we don't. And so there's a lot of room for overlap between our observation of what we can call aliens or UFOs and what we might call spiritual phenomena. And also I would suspect that they may have what we might call spiritual technology. Let's say their brains are 20% larger than ours, and they have a frontal cortex that's way more powerful, and that might be able to perceive a dimension of reality that we're just barely able to do. I've mentioned many times, I'm married to a remote viewer. Tracy's really good. There's a lot of people who are good remote viewers. There is a genuine reality to the psychic phenomena. I think human beings have that. But what if these other beings have more? If they have more, and what if furthermore they understand technological means by which they can amplify their psychic capabilities? So I think that would enable them for us to perceive them in ways that might seem spiritual, or So I think that researchers like Diana Pasolka and other people who focus on that side of it, they're doing valuable work. I'm always I get a little nervous when there are people who believe like they've got the whole thing solved and this is the answer. I'm not saying she does that, but once in a while you run into people who they feel like I've got the answer. It's all this, it's all that, and I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I'm just grateful because those are the people I know I don't need to listen to. So it's just at least somebody I don't have to listen to. Anyone who knows what's going on.
Email me all the time.
Yes,
They let you know
Yeah.
how they're feeling. That's why I feel like this kind of volume is this endeavor is so valuable. Because it just you've gone to the effort and done the work of, at least to the best of your ability, trying to discern reality from fiction, and because of that, it becomes an even more compelling kind of read. Simply the sheer volume of it. Again, it sort of reaffirms the sense, because you can cherry pick one story or one topical story of the day, and you can start to go, and someone can throw dust in the air, and you're like, okay, I'm confused. But when you just sort of take it as a collective whole, you just go, Jesus, mercy, this is just happening.
It's shocking.
It's shocking, and
the research was shocking to me.
Mm-hmm. There's also these also. I'm more drawn to the military cases, of course, the ones where there's this uptick in. I love these fascinating cases of the 18th century, and you're sort of wondering, but it is a little hard to grab onto and feel that you don't know, right?
A few of the early ones are amazing, but I basically agree with you.
But then you get to something like the USS FDR, which is like this kind of like, co-lead of this story. There's just so much going on around this aircraft carrier. It seems like the first first one to carry nuclear capability. Or you tell it, just give us a little background on that.
The USS Franklin Delano Roosevelt was an aircraft carrier. I think it was the first to carry nuclear ordnance. I think that's right. And in fact, that carrier had many UFO encounters, both aerial and water-based. That aircraft carrier, I didn't even include this one, but it was in part of Operation Mainbrace, which was in 1952. That was the first NATO naval exercise, and they did that in the North Sea in September of '52. The FDR was there. The entire NATO fleet was encountering UFOs during this whole series of exercises. It's been much written about. But then the FDR also had several other USO encounters later in the 1950s. And in the volume that's about to come out, Volume 2, just before it was retired in 1977, it had another one in 1975, which was quite amazing. So yeah, it had quite a few, like 3 or 4 that I was able to find. And one from 1954 was written about. This was an anonymous former officer of the ship. And so, we have to keep in mind, so like we want like formal documentation. We want Freedom of Information Act documents at every opportunity. But the fact is, especially when you're dealing with U.S. Navy or Soviet Navy accounts, you're going to get a lot of anonymous people writing it after the fact. That is just the nature of the beast. These people were sworn to secrecy at the time, and it's usually 20, 30, sometimes 40 years later, they will, you'll see they'll write to like a blog site. Sometimes they'll give their name, sometimes they'll be anonymous, and that's just the way it is, and you got to take it for what it's worth. But one anonymous man, he was an officer, very meticulous, described, he wouldn't even say what ocean, what body of water it was in. But they saw a large cigar-shaped object descend from above. It just came from wherever, and it hung right over the ship. Then it shot back up and then came back down, and either it seemed much larger than before or was literally a different craft. And then 2 saucer disc-type craft came out of the ocean, entered into this large cigar, and the cigar-shaped craft then just tilted and went into the ocean right next to the FDR.
Was this the one where, because there was one where there was a 10 to 20 minute engagement or attempted engagement of weaponry, correct? Like they,
yeah. So
this was but they couldn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, well, there's several. So that one, the officer said we tried and failed to engage weapons with this. So that was one. But you might be thinking of one, even though this will be in my next volume, but I've talked about it even in the first one. 1971, the USS John F. Kennedy aircraft carrier.
Oh, okay, yeah. No,
which was actually, believe it or not, in the Bermuda Triangle. Looks like it. July 2nd. And that ship also, I don't know if the object came out of the water. All that we know is the guy running communications, so we do have his name. He said all the comms just turned into gibberish and were garbled. So nothing going in and nothing would go out. That everything was blocked. And he heard people screaming on the intercom system, like, it's God, it's the end of the world, that type of thing. And he's like, oh, crap. So he goes out to watch.
Better get up top.
It's like, shit. There's this massive, he said it was like a beach ball held at arm's length, this massive spherical glowing
oh my God.
Orange object hovering over the ship. Where did it come from? Who knows? But everything got shut down, and weapon systems for 20 or 25 minutes, he said, everything was down. 25. Ship went to battle stations, general quarters, almost immediately, and stayed there for that whole time. So that was another one, but there's quite a few of these. Several where the ships actually were dead in the water. So like not just communications and weapons, but actually the engine, at least in a handful of cases, U.S. and Soviet. It's crazy.
So in something like the JFK aircraft, that event, it's 71, so we're getting further into modern times where, there's more ways to record things. Now, how are you judging the veracity of that story? How does that fit the criteria of your system? And especially when you're dealing with do you know their office? What's your process for that?
The JFK one actually ranks very well. And the reason is several. So A, we know the name of the man, his name was James Kopf with a K. He gave his testimony 20 plus years ago to Stephen Greer. He wrote it online to George Filer of Filer's Files. Like, we know who James Kopf is. We know what his position was on the ship. But we also, I am in touch with another former Navy man who also served aboard the JFK in earlier years, and just went out of his way to contact. There's a lot of there's message boards for, old Navy guys, and depending on the ship you served. And he reached out and actually engaged with a number of other individuals who were aboard the JFK and who just shared their knowledge of this account. So there are other individuals who have corroborated this story from 1971. It's not the same as getting a declassified government document. But when you get a number of different people from different places to support this, I think you have to take it seriously. So I don't remember what I ranked the JFK. I went from 2 to 12. So 12 is like certain, and 2 is like very weak. But I'm sure I gave it a good ranking, like probably 8 or 9 at least.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been obviously in this book, it's a major undertaking, but you've been compiling credible evidence of the UFO phenomena and the USO phenomena now for a long time. And Tom and I are fairly new to this all, but I'm already very frustrated when I hear people who will just say, "Well, I'm skeptical," and then you ask them, "Well, what exactly are you skeptical of?" And they go, "Well, I'm just skeptical of the whole thing." And I go, "But based on what information are you skeptical?" That people don't seem to understand. Skepticism also requires a base of evidence to be meaningful.
Yeah. You want to engage in the subject. I mean, it's easy to be skeptical if you don't know anything about it, which is the case with, I would say, most individuals. Of course, there's a lot of people who believe and they don't know much either, but it's very easy to be skeptical without knowing much. And the problem, you said in the beginning, Dave, that the field is like fraying, and I do sense some of that, but it's fraying for all the wrong reasons. Like, I did not get into this subject 30 years ago because I wanted to follow all of the personal rivalries and arguments and all the he said, she said. Like, that was not what got me into UFO. No. What got me into this was the fact that these accounts were mind-blowingly fascinating, and I wanted to learn more. And that's what still drives me. But, I mean, in our era now especially, it's great. It's actually really great that we've got so many good people like you guys who've got your program, you're talking about the subject. That's all good, but there's definitely a lot of gossip. There's a lot of like, oh, I can't believe he said that. It's like, or even the whole disclosure narrative. Like, we treat it like a horse race, like elections. It's like, what's Congress going to do now with the UAP disclosure or the Transparency Act? Like, yeah, that's important, but the reality is there is a phenomenon by an agency that we have not formally identified that operates at levels beyond what we can do. They seem to have total mastery over our tech. They have total mastery over what they do. They don't really seem to give a crap over whether or not we, they just do what they do. And they will observe us, and they will then take off, and they will engage in electromagnetic interference with our technology when they feel like it. I think a lot of it is absolutely deliberate. Like, they're brazen, but they still don't announce themselves. Like, that's all fascinating, and that's not what we talk about. Like, instead we talk about,
who's a grifter, who isn't a grifter.
Who's a grifter, or like, I don't want to dunk on Lou Elizondo because I like Lou, but like, oh, he put out another fake photograph. It's like, okay, dude made a mistake, whatever. But like, we focus on all of these really tangential things. So in that context, I could understand why people would feel skeptical. They're like, I just see what looks like Barnum and Bailey circus here.
Yeah, it
There's
also
so
might
much
explain
more-
why the non-humans aren't that keen on talking to us.
Yeah, we're rather messed up. I mean, some people will think, all right, so we're messed up because they're the ones messing us up. But I think we're pretty good at doing that to ourselves. And I mean, you know, I rewatched some of the Planet of the Apes movies recently with my wife, and she said, and I got her to watch the original one with Charlton Heston, which is like the
Oh,
greatest.
God. I was going to ask.
Of course. But then we watched some of the more recent ones, and she made a really kind of on-point statement, which was like, why would aliens want us at their level any more than we would want apes at our level? It's like, I wouldn't want apes, intelligent apes, running around the streets in my neighborhood. It's like, no thank you, guys.
No.
You can stay
No.
over there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, think about it from like an alien point of view. Like, they're telepathic. They probably have relative IQs of 300 or 500 or whatever. And they're looking at us, and we're armed to the teeth. We are engaged in warfare all the time. We engage in repression of our own people all the time. And we still like have the ability to destroy the planet, whether it's nukes or who knows what other, bioweapons. And so they've got to be looking at us thinking, can we actually deal with these people at all? Like, how could we possibly do that? And plus, I don't even think that we're close to understanding their version of reality. If they can manipulate space and time, if they have telepathic capabilities, how could they actually explain anything to us at all about the nature of reality as they understand it? Like, I don't really know if we would be able to follow some of that.
I think that's a big case that they make of why, personally, I'm sort of excited to see what the future's like with all this new technology and all these possibilities and robots and all that. I mean, it seems like the future's finally here, as opposed to sort of feeling like I was waiting for the future for 40 years or something.
And suddenly it sucks.
Well, it's some right now. The moment, the moment is sucky. But it does. That's the case for AI, right? Is that it might just become intelligent to a point where it just can't relate to us, and we can't relate to it, and our, the logic and reasoning of these beings, of this craft, of this phenomenon, we're trying to sort of pull it down to our understanding of behavior or what it might be interested in, where in fact, there's simply probably no way to comprehend that. I do think, just as it relates to the high noise, low evidence environment that we're in right now, just as with this community and with what makes this, your book, again, so valuable is you can look back during the low noise environments, look at these stories, look at these events, kind of judge them, because you don't even know what to trust. You don't know what photograph to trust you're seeing now. You don't know what video to trust. You don't know what, but you are looking at event, like I'm thinking of like the Swedish rockets weird swarm that took place over, I don't know if it was a summer, it was months of these, and
Spring, summer, and fall a bit of 1946.
It made me think of, and I want to hear about like what that was in your opinion, but also it reminded me of our drone swarm of the past, this past December and November, and which I'm obsessed with, because it just seems like we're moving on from what the fuck was that? Like what
Yeah, it hasn't been explained.
Nobody has come
adequately.
forward with any reasonable anything.
That was a classic UFO wave or flap. It has had all the earmarks of every single UFO flap of the past, including the fact that we have no resolution on it. It's like they come, they go. Everyone's got an opinion. Not just the drone swarm. Every flap in the past had the same thing. People were saying, "Oh, it's our secret technology," or "It's this," or "It's that." Everyone's always got opinions, and then the flap would end, and it would recede into the past, and people would forget about it, or researchers would be like, "What the hell was that?"
The fuck
and
was
that's
that?
the drone swarm.
Yeah,
if
and
they
it's
were drones.
well.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think the Swedish rockets thing is a weird one, because that didn't seem to make sense. That this is a time where perhaps they were testing out new missile technology or what could, but they had a lot of strange aspects to it and a lot of
Yeah,
USO
very
aspects to it. What?
I did a whole piece on that in my USO book. Because some of those objects were seen to go into water, and I thought it's fair to treat them as such. Most of them were aerial sightings. But yeah, so in the late spring of 1946, starting over Sweden, that was where the activity was most intense for most of the time. People started seeing these objects. They called them ghost rockets because really no one had any other word for it. Some of them seemed cylindrical shaped, rocket-like, but except they weren't rockets because they maneuvered. They were seen, and there were so many of them. So it's like, where are they coming from? And so people wondered, so World War II had just ended a year before. Everyone knew that the Germans had been working on V1 and V2 rocket technology. That was no secret. And everyone knew that everyone wanted those German scientists, including the Russians. They had their own group of them. The Americans and the Brits and the Allies had their group of them. And so people wondered, were the Russians or the Soviets sending rockets over Sweden in some kind of ploy to intimidate Sweden in some way? When you really look back at the politics of the early Cold War, none of that makes any sense whatsoever. There is no evidence to this day that Russia had anything to do with those wave of sightings. Zero. And also, they would have had to double or triple the length, the trajectory of those rockets very, very quickly. And
How far they had to travel across?
Exactly.
Okay, right.
So that's a no. And then aside from that, the phenomenon spread throughout the rest of Europe throughout the summer, including France, including, I think, Britain, and definitely, for whatever reason, over Greece. And the Greek government, this was such a big thing, they had a scientist who had been on the Manhattan Project. His name was Paul Santorini, and he was a very significant scientist. He was back in Greece, and he was put in charge of a scientific study to look into these ghost rockets and to find out what they were. Were they rockets? Were they Russian? Were they anything? 20 years later, he gave an interview in the late 60s, and he said, we did look into it. We very easily determined these were not Soviet, these were not rockets, these were not anyone's technology that we could identify. And as soon as we came to those conclusions, a foreign government, and he wouldn't say which, but it's obviously the U.S., came in and stopped the investigation. This is in 1946.
Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ.
So, a lot was going on here. We don't have an answer to that. There's much more to be said about these ghost rockets. Many of them, or some of them, did go into the water. Some of them were apparently studied by the Swedish government. They classified their main report on it for 40 years until we got...
actual objects were recovered?
Yeah, but we don't know where they were or what they were, but they stated that they studied some of these objects, but what we have doesn't give us any information about technical aspects of them. But they gave a very bureaucratic answer in their report that was a very roundabout way of saying these do not belong to anyone that we know.
And today's drone swarm or UFO flap or USO, there was, of course, reports that waves were coming from the ocean. There was just every manner. Yes. I am just, what's your takeaway? What's your best estimate? I was getting calls. I've told Dave that I was getting calls from relatives on Staten Island, cousins who were freaked out that every day from
in the thick of it.
When the lights went out, by like 5 or 6 at night, they would come out and they would be doing their thing until 6 in the morning. They'd disappear, and he was flipped out.
Yeah, the biggest frustration for me of the drone swarm wave, if we can call it that, it's like when I study sighting flaps of the past, like you go specific. So like at 7:13 p.m. on this date, this witness saw this thing. And we don't have any of that practically for the drone swarm. What we have are a mass of sightings that You don't know who the witnesses are. You don't have any like specific. And then there's all these videos that were put out there. Like, where the hell is the video from? And then it's also weird because, so is the New Jersey, New York City drone swarm the same as the one that was over Lakenheath in the UK, or over Ramstein in Europe, or over supposedly in California? Like, are they all related? It's really hard to know. But we're talking about these objects that were said several times to be coming out of the water, out of the Atlantic Ocean, and I heard that as well. And one of them supposedly was a swarm that harassed a Coast Guard vessel, we're told. Now, okay, so you have, as far as I can see, two possibilities of objects that are coming out of the water. One, you could have a submarine that launches a drone, and that so it's not really coming out of the water. It's not actually transmedium. Or two, something is transmedium and it's emerging from the water. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, people were claiming that somebody's Navy using submarines was doing this, but who? The Chinese? Someone said the Iranians. That's absurd.
And the weird thing is that people seem to take that notion as an excuse to not think about it anymore. As though a submarine, an Iranian submarine off the coast of the United States releasing drones from underwater. That's all it is? Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah. But are they, or just, if they were anyone's submarines off the coast releasing any kind of devices that could interfere with air traffic in the United States, that could ground military Air Force bases, But if they say, they're drones coming out of a submarine, then people go, oh, well, nothing to talk about then. No, that's huge if that's the truth.
Listen, if Chinese tech has us by the balls in that capacity, that they are that to the extent that the government won't even admit that was the tech of another foreign adversary, I mean, that's as big a problem in my mind as whether or not it's another civilization. But it's either way. Like, we gotta talk about it. We have to acknowledge it occurred.
I believe the Chinese are developing genuine transmedium objects, by the way. This is what I'm hearing. I mean, they're not like, they don't do what UFOs or USOs do. They're not high performance transmedium, but they apparently have developed craft that can function under the water and above the water.
Which is totally, I believe it. I believe what we're not seeing, whatever they have, we're probably not seeing, and it's 10, 15, 20 years ahead of what we can imagine. And if so, it still strikes me that this administration in particular would be kind of loud about it or, blustery about it. But they were utterly, fantastically, ridiculously silent about it, and then came up with that ridiculous FAA experimental bullshit. And I don't know. Especially when you saw governors and mayors and state senators and reps and
police officers,
sheriff's deputies freaking out on local TV for days and days and days.
That was the moment where that was really early in Trump's administration, and it was too bad for him because he sounded exactly like the Biden White House.
Yeah,
he sounded exactly the same.
It was very deep state sounding. I mean, it's just like
totally.
I mean, there's been a lot of that, and different podcasts can cover that sort of material. But yes, there's been a lot of that. But it made me think. As it relates to USOs, which may uptick after World War II, right? We've nuclear technology. There seems to be tremendous interest around these objects. And I'm curious about whether you see a similar phenomenon happening now, and if that might be related to technology. We've talked about maybe AI inviting. I don't know. How do you sense that, or is that just a?
I like to study contemporary reports from time to time. So, like, I'm a big fan of the National UFO Reporting Center, which is totally open source. Anyone can go there, and to get a sense of like where a sighting being seen. And there's a lot going on, and you're raising a good question. Like, is our technological transformation right now, like basically AI, is that prompting them to do something new? And I don't know yet. What I can say in my USO study, I do feel like what I learned a lot in this. And when, I'm studying basically the 19th and 20th century of our own exploration of the oceans. And what you realize is prior to the 20th century, prior to the year 1900, we didn't even have any serviceable submarines. The first real submarine literally was operational in 1900. And that was our beginning. And so if you're an alien and if you're operating at all in the waters of Earth, you got nothing to worry about for a long time. But during the First and then the Second World Wars, the human race really started militarizing the oceans a lot. And we started putting technology down there and sonar systems and then nuclear submarines that could stay under the water basically forever. And so what I think it looks like to me is that there is, I call it like a dance. Like they're watching us, and then they're watching us as we start to watch them, and we're watching each other. And then you've got like the Americans and the Russians, they're in their submarines under the water looking for each other. But then there's this other third party. Who are these other guys? Circling around our submarines sometimes. It's a very interesting thing. But I think that they have adapted to some extent to us. And they become more stealthy than in the past. One thing I think that I've noticed is that there was a switch to much more predominantly nighttime activity starting in the late 1960s. And late 1960s makes sense in a way because, that's really when a lot of our electronic technology started becoming very pervasive. Like we started having decent satellite coverage by the late 60s of the world, just beginning. And also electronic means of detection by ships and aircraft. By the late 60s, we're becoming pretty good and pretty pervasive. And what I noticed is that, because one of the things I tracked is, did a USO event occur during the daytime or at nighttime? A very simple thing. And up until the late 60s, it was 50-50 day versus night. And after 1967 or so, it's like they're all 3/4 or more at night. And military cases, even more so, almost 90% of the military cases happen at night. That's not random. That's not an accident. I mean, to me, that indicates that the operators of these craft are making decisions and they're making behavioral changes based on some criterion.
Mm-hmm. And some knowledge of our abilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed and was happy to learn that I'm near a hotspot, Catalina Island. I mean, the West Coast. I mean, I knew it was, but a little, based the Tic Tac and the San Diego activity and the military presence here. But it was interesting to hear repeatedly in your research how there are these, kind of key areas that, in some cases, kind of corroborate previous stories. But what are the big areas that you found in your research?
Yeah, Catalina Island, the whole Channel Island area for sure, particularly starting partly in the 60s, but the 1970s and 80s, that area becomes very, very active in terms of reports. Puerto Rico, hands down, in my opinion, is the king of USOs. Like there's just so many, particularly the western edge of the island, but really the whole western side, the whole northern side, and most of the eastern side as well, and a bit of the south.
What characteristics do they share characteristics, these areas?
Well, you've got on the eastern side of Puerto Rico for a long time there was the U.S. Navy. They're not there now. Puerto Rico still has a ton of sightings to this day. Catalina Island, of course, you've got a Navy presence in that whole region there. Another hot spot, I would say, maybe the Persian Gulf, maybe the South China Sea. I think there's a lot of activity going on in those regions. Certainly along the Atlantic coast of South America, I think there's a lot of activity there as well.
Do they correlate?
Where there isn't.
Do they correlate to like deep sea trenches? Generally, I know Catalina has a very deep trough.
Yeah. That does, and the Puerto Rico Trench, yes, I think so, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
One area I would like to mention is the lakes of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there are quite a few really remarkable USO events in Canadian lakes. I mean, Canada's got an infinite number of lakes, and there's just a lot of, especially out in British Columbia, quite a bit, but pretty much everywhere. I mean, one that I probably should have included because I just love it so much because I found it myself. There was a case from 1936 in the north part of the Northwest Territories, and there was a 1936. There was a 25-year-old guy whose job was to do aerial mapping for the Canadian government. So he had a plane with a pontoon plane, and he could land on the water, and he's out there. He named the name of the lake. It's extremely far north, and there's nothing around him for many, many hundreds of miles, like no living creatures, no people. And he looks up, and he sees a silver, a dull gray, tic-tac shaped object. He describes it almost exactly as a tic-tac. And he said, I couldn't really tell how high up it was because there was no reference. There was no clouds or nothing. But I saw it very clearly, and it went from a north-south orientation to an east-west. It rotated and then instantly accelerated and was gone. But it was over one of the lakes.
I'm not sure even
territory.
Tic Tacs, the candy existed back then. You know, I mean, there's truly no reference point for that. It does. There were a couple of those, like the Alaska change, like way up that sort of areas between Russia and Alaska. There are these, you know, you'll have like two people doing research or something, and they're seeing.
Okay, so I got to tell you one. Yeah. That's in this book, my first volume here, from 1952. So the Aleutian Island chain, which of course runs from Alaska to the eastern Siberia, Kamchatka. It stretches for many miles. So there's one of these tiny little islands. It's called Shemya Island. I think it's like 5 miles long. It's a tiny place. But there were Americans working there. And this one guy, his name was Eldon White. He wrote 14 years later to NICAP organization at the time. No one ever paid attention to this guy's letter. It just sat in the files until someone else found it years later. So he was working. He said, I had the day off. There's nothing to do on Shemya Island. So he was outside looking out at the ocean, and he said, this is January 1952. He said, I looked up, and I saw a bat-shaped craft just above me. There's nothing supposed to be up there. This is truly middle of nowhere. He said, I'm watching it, and it lowered itself to a certain altitude, maybe, I'm trying to remember, maybe 50 feet above his head. And then it tilted and just dove into the water. And he stood there watching, like, for the next 5 minutes, like, is this thing going to come out of the water? And it never did. And all he could do is, 14 years later, he writes about it to an organization.
Tell me what this thing was.
And that's it.
Yeah. Like, and it's very common for people to sit on that for a long time. Like, people do sit on these events in their lives for incredibly long periods of time.
Typical.
Typical.
You just think, like, you're out there, north of you is the Bering Sea. It is utterly remote. What the hell is this thing doing out there? And is it like giving a little show for Eldon White?
Mm-hmm.
Or like in 1936, the Canadian aerial mapping guy. Like, this thing just happens to be above him. He just looks up and it's like right there. Like, I got to think maybe it's checking him out.
Yeah.
And then it just takes off.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like, encounters don't. I mean, I used to think of them as random, but it doesn't seem like that's the case.
I think that there's we don't really know how to think about these other beings because we haven't had a conversation with them. We don't know their psychology, but we often forget they probably have their own volition. They probably have their own agenda, their own goals. So I think that they are actively watching us. There's one case I did include from the 1850s was a search and rescue mission. Some people might remember about the Lost Franklin expedition. This was back in the days they were looking for the Northwest Passage up in the, north of Canada trying to get through there, and people died in that. And there was a Franklin expedition; they died. A few years later, there was 2 ships that went in search of them, and they turned out okay. They all lived, and they did find the Franklin expedition. It was terrible. They had all died, but anyway, there was what I think is a USO sighting there, and they were utterly remote in these wooden ships. And I just have to think, if I were an alien watching these humans, I would be interested in those people. Like that's a hell of a thing that they're doing. You're going up into the remote northern reaches with the most primitive technology. Like, hats off to you. And if I were an alien visiting back then, I would want to watch those guys myself. I think that may be what happened.
Yeah,
You mentioned this
kind of like they say, watching a dog walk on its hind legs. You know, it's out of the ordinary, so you pay attention to it. You know, even if they're not very good at it.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story that you tell of in the Brazilian rainforest and these rivers. That there's this one area where it's a kind of microclimate it's an area where there's all of these near extinct species. It's this kind of deep, diverse, biologically diverse area where there's this crazy sighting. It's like this. It's sort of like they saw something out of Fantastic Voyage. There's like these people in sort of different outfits, inside this craft, and yet there's something really compelling about it. And as you say, the moment beings get involved for whatever reason, like, all right, a lot of people are like, I'm out. Like the moment you see a being, like, right. I'm not listening anymore. It seems to, even though everything we're talking about is rather extraordinary, but it does remove it from being. It just becomes something utterly different and unique, and maybe that's what throws people off. But there's something about that you reminded me of that like maybe they pick little places that are interesting to them but so remote to us.
Brazil's an active place, and that case you're referring to was from 1953. I remember this one well. And you had 2 Brazilian like hunters. They were out in the depths of the Amazon rainforest. And this one particular area, is I really studied this one a lot, and it happens to be very ecologically unique and rich. And they saw a kind of elongated craft on this river, on the water. It's one of the tributaries for the Amazon. And they saw people, like human beings, not aliens, that looked very young and very fit. And this happens. Like, this is something that people have reported. Anyway, from the description of everything, it looked like that craft was at maximum occupancy. There's like 5 or 6 people in there. But anyway, they noticed the locals watching them, and they quickly took off.
It had such vibes of like a time travel tourist craft. I mean, just the illustration's great. The illustrations in general are great. I thought they were really a great added element to it, and really help you kind of like put, just locations and geography and all of it sort of together, because so many times you're describing very difficult to describe craft and changing shape. So it's cool to have those. But yeah, it just struck me. I was like, oh, it seemed like a tourist group that got caught where they shouldn't have and took off or something. I mean, it was just it's a bizarre one, and yet really, fascinating.
It's important to ask, like, when we think of an alien presence here, it's true. Like we often, and this is me too. Like my go-to is to think, okay, there's an alien government somewhere, and they're making a decision, and they're sending this group of people under orders to do this, and maybe that's true, but it could be a little more crazy than that.
Yeah, there's so many.
Just like someone's like, I'm going to Earth, man. I'm gonna
check it out, guys. Let's go. Nobody's going to be down there. No duck hunters will be down in this little like. Let's just check it out.
There might be laws like, okay, you're not supposed to interact with the locals. Let's not do that. But like, then someone screws up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'd go look at dinosaurs if we could. I mean, I'd go check out it. I'd go back, and if we could,
we keep building pioneer villages.
Exactly.
People go to those.
But no one goes to the
butter.
Some people go that. I like a good Pioneer Village. I could never drag my kids there.
I used to play vintage baseball, guys.
Really? I didn't know that was a
10
thing.
years. Yeah,
That's-
I love it.
What is it? Like those mitts that are just can't handle the
No
I mean,
mitts.
what-
Barely
no
baseball.
no mitts. Okay.
Just-
That's interesting.
1850s style, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We did it.
Richard, I want to pivot for a second because there's the anonymous interview you did in 2012. Very
the guy
fast.
who was a CIA contract.
Yes.
With
Yes.
CIA,
I'm fascinated.
between a craft at Area 51.
I'm fascinated by this. It's very compelling, and it's Jeremy Corbell's. I guess directed that. There's
Jeremy
a
was there
cameraman?
with us.
Yeah.
This. Where are you now with that? Like, what are your feelings about that at this stage? I assume Anonymous is no longer
He's passed away.
with us.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about that? Because that's such it's an amazing interview, and I'm just curious how you feel about that afterwards, and whether there's any additional evidence you found or anything about that.
I know his name, and I wonder if I shouldn't mention it, but it's Albert, and I'll leave the last name out.
Okay.
And
maybe set the stage a little for the audience, just because I'm
I will,
bringing that
yes.
up very
So-
randomly.
So back in, it was 2012 and the very beginning of 2013, I was approached, Stephen Bassett and a gentleman named Ron Garner, who's no longer around. And Jeremy was kind of getting started in the UFO space at that time. Anyway, I was asked to interview this gentleman who was an important whistleblower, and I said, okay. I learned later, and I felt a little bad. Linda Moulton Howe had cultivated this guy many years before, and she did an extended interview with him. So he was Linda's guy. He wasn't my guy. But anyway, I got to go up there. I interviewed him, and his health was so bad. Several times I was literally afraid that he was going to die right in front of me. His health was so terrible. He was accompanied, however, by his son-in-law, who I got to talk to quite a bit. I will just say these are good people. Like, they're a very religious family. They're very, upright. I think very rigorously honest. I absolutely believe that. So the man's story was, he wasn't in the CIA, but he worked in... I'm trying to remember now. I think signals intelligence.
Yeah,
But he was working with the CIA, coordinating with them in various capacities, and relating to UFOs. And he and his supervisor were flown along with a very few other people to what we would call Area 51. He described some very, very... I can't remember if he got into biometrics for security or not. He might have. And that they saw, actually he stated to me that they saw several flying saucer craft, and which I don't know if all of that made it into what ended up on YouTube, because he actually said even more than that. But then he stated, and this went onto YouTube, that there was like a glass... barrier, and he saw an alien, and this alien being gave him one telepathic message, which was, "We mean you no harm," or I think that's what it was. A lot of that I can't recall some of the details. I will say there were a few things that this man said that did not make it to YouTube that struck me as very fantastical, and which I did not believe. Now, I will just say, I had experience watching this happen to my father toward the end of his life, where the memory starts to change. And my dad was a New York City police officer, and I grew up knowing every single one of his stories.
Yeah.
Told them to me.
Yeah.
When no one else would listen, I would listen. So I knew them all, and in my dad's in his late 70s, which was about the age of this man, my dad's stories began to change. And I would bring this up. I would point them out. Like, that's not how that went. And he would get very indignant. He'd be like, no, Richie, that's how this happened. I'm like, whatever. I know it didn't. And I got some of that vibe from this gentleman for some of these things that he said, which I'm not even going to go into it, because it would diminish his credibility.
Yeah.
And I
But
don't think that they're true.
Yeah, but you can have elements of dementia and still elements
Exactly.
of clarity, and
That's right.
And some dementia doesn't discount everything that you say.
I talked with his son-in-law, who was a very, very upstanding individual, and he said to me, "Look, my father-in-law told me most of these things for years. A few of the things I heard him say, I've never heard before." So that made me also wonder if, like, there were some new things coming in. So do I believe him? Yeah, I believe that there's something true here. He really went, I don't know if it made to YouTube, like he met with Vice President Richard Nixon. And,
Eisenhower was going to
President
send the First
Eisenhower.
Army into Area 51 to get the,
Yeah.
get the
I don't
goods.
know what to think about that.
Well, and I guess it can sort of relate it to, like, Jesse Michaels just did that extended interview with Malmstrom. I'm forgetting his first name.
Malmgren, yes.
Malmgren, yes. And clearly that was a man who knew he was near the end of his life, and was wanting to, get things on the record.
I think Malmgren did a fantastic interview with Jesse.
Yeah. And, do you think an interview at that point in your life, even if you are in that, there is that danger of some dementia or some haziness in memory, but the desire to get it on the record near the end of your life, does that give it more weight to you when you're investigating these things?
I think so. I mean, when you meet with someone, the oldest generation, the oldest people around are the most precious, because they're not going to be around long, and they all have information that we need. So anytime someone at that stage in life is willing to talk, we should listen. We do have to be careful about cognitive deficiencies that may happen at that stage. In the case of Harold Malmgren, I saw no evidence of any of that at all. None.
No, he seemed very, very clear-headed.
He was incredible.
And very precise in his memories. And, and his memories can be corroborated because they're, most of what he did is written in the history of the country.
I agree. The gentleman that I interviewed, one thing that I will say, and he did not want me to repeat this, but he's gone now, and I don't think there's anything wrong. I believe him. He said, we knew, this is in the late 50s, he said about CIA, domestic U.S.-based CIA operations where they were involved in just killing people, assassination teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we have any trouble believing that, but the way he told me this, we had finished shooting. He was, I think, in like a wheelchair or in some chair, and he whispered into my ear, cupping his... we were in a tiny little room. Jeremy was there, Ron Garner was there, Steve was there, and he's cupping his hands over my ear, whispering the fact that he knew that there were CIA assassination teams in different parts of the United States. And he said, you cannot ever tell anyone this. I can't let anyone know that I know this. Like, oh my God. So I have every reason to think that he was telling me the truth there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so, oh God, it's like everything with this topic, because like Dave, I feel that when you're dealing with someone at the end of their life, you just have to listen with that much more, fierceness and that there is really something compelling to that. And there is in this interview. However, I have a very similar story as you and your father. My father had dementia. He was a World War II vet. He was on Iwo Jima, and I heard all those, just like you, I'd heard all those stories. And then when he was in the late stages of dementia, he was interviewed by someone who was doing a World War II story, and I think my brother had taken him to this Clint Eastwood movie. There was a recent there was something with military combat movie that he had seen very recently, and that just went right into the story. Like, that went right in. And so, he had these incredibly true stories of his experience. And yet I recall the exact same thing, being like, oh, and with an interviewer going, oh, I don't, that I don't think that
Isn't that
occurred.
Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, I think it was almost literally that. It was a Clint Eastwood movie, but that is, and I think it's, and I'm glad you bring it up because it's still, people should watch this interview. It's very, very compelling, and he's, yes, obviously not of good health, and there is something really interesting there.
I think he was fundamentally truthful with me, but I think that I got him too late.
Mm-hmm.
Linda Moulton Howe did a detailed audio interview with him. I don't think there's video with it. And if I'm not mistaken, it's still on her website. So if one's a member of her site, they could probably get access to it.
It's worth.
I heard it once, but I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah. Well, I know when my mom, near the end of her life, she had some dementia, and she could remember everything, details about our lives, knew everyone's names, the storylines of all of her favorite TV shows. But she was convinced that the hospital she was in was a really nice hotel. So I called her out as a liar and said, "I will never believe anything you tell me ever again."
You said that to your mother.
And I think that's the only way you can deal with these liars.
You got to deal with that way, Dave. I think tough love is the best
it's called
approach.
Tough love.
Yeah. You got to deal with it there. Well done.
That's true. But yeah. So most of her memories were completely accurate, and there was no problems. But there was just some things were just weirdly distorted for her near the end.
Yeah.
And so of these kind of, what do you think of the recent whistleblowers, the Jake Barber? What are your takeaways from some of, there is, he makes a compelling interviewee.
Barber does. Matthew Brown's another one.
Yeah.
There's a number of them. There are actually quite a few people. Randy Anderson, I like him. In the last couple of years, we've had a few. Of course, everyone knows David Grush. I think we're fortunate to have these people coming out. And it's not surprising that some of them are subject to character smears and character attacks and things like that. That's to be expected. But this is not something that we had in previous years, not to this extent, not this many of them. I was particularly impressed by Matthew Brown. I think he's the one who wrote the Immaculate Constellation document. And but Jake Barber, I'm very glad we had him come out, and quite a few of them. I think since 2017, we're in a different place where we're still at this kind of kindergarten level conversation about the subject in many ways, but at least it's no longer a career ender necessarily for someone to come out and talk about this now. And I think that's what we're seeing. The intense career-ending pressure is lessened, or in some cases gone, and so we're seeing the result. Like some people they're more willing to come out and tell what they know. So I think that's really good, and I'm sure we're going to see more of that. I don't think that's over.
I guess there's talk there is going to be another congressional hearing coming soon with some more
talking about that.
with people who are claiming firsthand knowledge of legacy programs.
We absolutely need more and more of these. I mean, whether it's really going to lead to genuine, full, honest disclosure, I doubt that. But I think what we're seeing is action-reaction. So I'm not one of these people who thinks that everything is an op coming from the deep state. There definitely are lots of ops coming from the deep state. But I believe for a long time that our deep state establishment has its own factions, and they don't all think the same way. And so you have high-level insiders. They're still establishment people. They still believe in the military. They still believe in empire. But they also believe in some level of UFO openness, and they're coming out to talk. And my attitude is I don't have to agree with all of their politics to say, yes, please talk. We want to hear what you have to say about this. But there are other factions that do not support any kind of discussion on this. This is it's easy to forget how disruptive this subject is and will be. I co-authored a book on the disclosure theme 15 years ago.
I've read that book. It's a great book.
Thank you.
Bryce.
Yeah, Bryce Abel co-authored it with me, and he was wonderful to work with. It's kind of an optimistic book by my standards, I will just say. but I'm glad we wrote it the way we did. But that book makes very clear, like, UFO disclosure is a mind-blowing, revolutionary subject that will upend all of our institutions. But now here we are, we're in a kind of disclosure-ish era where, like the Navy's admitted they have UAP. Okay, but they're not quite admitting that they know what these things are. Like, they're doing a great job, much better than I would have thought, at being able to say, yeah, there's a mystery, but we don't know what it is. It's like, I didn't think that would happen. I believed that if there was going to be a major admission, that it would cause an immediate avalanche, and that has not happened. But a genuine disclosure would cause an avalanche. Like, there's no way around it. And so we just haven't had that. So we're seeing all this pushback, and the mainstream establishment is hanging on very well. They're playing very good defense, frankly, at preventing this issue from going much further. But there will be a point, like, if this, given enough time, it's entirely feasible that there will be an honest, open admission that this is a non-human intelligence that's here. And at some point, it's going to upend our technological, our industries, our global financial system will probably be very negatively affected. Look, the United States relies on maintenance of the petrodollar system for its geopolitical dominance around the world. That means it forces nations to buy their oil in U.S. dollars. And once the U.S. went off the gold standard in 1971, very quickly after that, Henry Kissinger ensured that gold would be replaced by oil, and no problem, all the nations in the world would be forced to buy U.S. dollars, and that has kept U.S. global dominance in place. Absolutely. Well, a genuine answer to the technology of flying saucers very likely includes a post-petroleum paradigm. Well, and if you're in a post-petroleum paradigm, there goes the petrodollar. There literally, in a flash, goes U.S. geopolitical financial dominance.
Well, I was going to say, you've pointed out already that our encounters with whatever's behind the phenomenon correlates with leaps in our technological advancement. Like the Industrial Revolution is basically where you were finding a jump in incidence. And then after that, the next jump is our splitting of the atom and developing of nuclear weapons. And so now do you think, it seems like we're definitely in a new giant shift in our technology, which is AI. Would you think that's another area where, much like when we started exploring the ocean, we started getting in the way and, kind of irking the other beings?
It's a fantastic question, Dave. I think you might have mentioned it as well, Tom. I think we have to watch for that because we are at we're at another pivot, an inflection point where this is something new that is clearly transformative of our entire civilization. And so I think it's fair, like we should at least be looking for changes in their behavior at this time.
And really,
I haven't really started doing that, but I think it's a good idea.
My slight worry is that they're just going to wait us out, and they'll just wait till they don't have to deal with us. They can just deal directly with the AI.
I think this is a fantastic, interesting, fascinating dynamic. Like humans, AI, and non-human intelligence. Like how does that all work? And do the non-human intelligences have their own version of AI that they work with? Do they serve their own algorithms like we do?
Are they a descendant of biological beings?
We had a really, I think Avi Loeb made an interesting observation when we interviewed him where he thought this might be AI visiting baby AI. We have this little, we're sort of nurturing this. He didn't necessarily feel that AI had to be, he said if you raise a child well, they can turn into a decent, adult with values, and if you raise it poorly, it can turn into something, destructive. He thought that there was a lot of attributes to this phenomenon that could be AI, could show some of those characteristics, and that they might be curious more about this burgeoning intelligence. Whereas we might seem maxed out, we may have hit a ceiling at the moment. I think we'll get helped by AI. I thought that was a cool observation. I also wonder, to your point, Richard, about how much the government thinks we can withstand these sort of civilization-changing events all in a row. Can we handle sort of just what AI will do economically to the world, versus, what the disclosure. Somewhere, someone might be just thinking like, well, maybe we need to space these things out just in terms of how we, handle them, because that's a lot.
Yeah, good luck navigating that, is what they have the ability.
Yeah, true. Yeah, right.
I think that I think alien intelligence is probably any alien intelligence that can come here. I would bet is predominantly AI, but you get to a certain point, and there probably won't be any real distinction. Like in the future, are we really going to be distinguishing AI? I don't think so. I think there might be limits to natural biological intelligence anyway. I mean, we developed our intelligence, like if you look at the evolution of the human primate, our intelligence developed under very specific conditions, and I don't know how much larger our brains could be if we want to birth out of a woman's body. Like there are certain inherent limits there that would limit the size of our brain. Now, you could have denser neuro connections and all of that, and so you could still become smarter. But I suspect that an intelligence that's able to manipulate space and time, they've probably been enhancing themselves as well. So whether it's cybernetically or through genetic enhancement, they have their own version of CRISPR technology. They can probably do their own gene editing.
So we should probably start breeding women with pelvises the size of a VW bus, is what I think you're saying.
Yes, let's quote Richard as saying that. It's a specific.
See how that goes over. You're in Canada. I don't think they would support that.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that's. I think that's why I think an early Neuralink quote from Mr. Elon had to do with just putting something in our brains to help us keep up. It would just potentially help us keep up with this tech. With this thing that we are both fearing, and yet I recently saw the NVIDIA valuation at $4 trillion, where it's like we have the house on fire, like AI's coming, and but we're putting all this money into accelerant. It's like we're just like, okay, so like let's just dose it.
We have no control over this. We
have
no control.
Well, and Jeffrey Hinton here in Toronto is, the godfather of neural nets. He's already saying he believes that the AI we've developed is sentient already. That it's just a question of degree at this point.
Yeah, I don't think he's the only one. I mean, you have to ask, like, what do you really need for something to be sentient? And I'm not sure if I know that answer myself. I remember years ago I read a book on AI written in the early 90s by a guy named Manuel de Landa. It was called Warfare, or War in the Age of Intelligent Machines. It's a really cool book, and he started off by talking about chaos theory and saying, like, when water in a bathtub starts to go down the drain, it forms a pattern. And he says, like, for us people who study chaos theory, that's interesting. It's like, when do you go from a system of disorder to a system of organization? And he says consciousness, he feels, is kind of like that. It's like, when do you get from a certain level of thinking to a higher level of organization that you then define as consciousness? But I think what his point was, even way back then, was it should theoretically be possible for organized information, because that's really what is consciousness and what is intelligence. I guess it's organizing information in some way. You have information, it's organized, and then that information becomes organized in such a way that it becomes aware. And is that a threshold, like you go from chaos to order? And could you meet that threshold in the case of an algorithm, as opposed to just a wet biological, sac inside your skull? Maybe. I think it's entirely possible. I believe there will be a sentient AI. If not now, it will be. It'll be.
Well, I
it'll be a
guarantee
way.
the last people to admit that AI is sentient will be the people who produced it. Because with that admission comes a tremendous amount of responsibility for that.
Yeah.
So I think the people working most closely with it will be the last ones to admit it's happened. I
Wouldn't
think
be surprised in the
yeah.
least.
Well, I think one of the things Hinton said was, he said, like, well, imagine I replace one neuron in your brain with a synthetic neuron. All right.
Exactly.
And then your brain continues to function exactly as normal, so you're still conscious, aren't you? All right, now what if I replace two neurons? You're still conscious, aren't you? Now what
And
about
you're still you?
You're still you. So what
Right.
what about we get to the part where we've replaced all your neurons and you don't detect any difference? Is that still a conscious entity?
But now your brain goes 100 times faster and can process X times more.
Yeah. So he's saying that,
You're a different personality. But
yeah, so he believes that consciousness is just is a question of degree, and we've already crossed the Rubicon. Where it's no longer an issue of is it going to be conscious. It is, and it's just how conscious will it get.
And there is no way that we're going to be able to regulate any of this. In my opinion, that's impossible. We can say, well, we should put guardrails in for this or that, but you're talking about international competition between nations, corporations, people. People will want their children to have the best genetics and the best implants. It won't just be gene splicing. It'll be gene splicing plus whatever Neuralink equivalents there are 20 years from now. We're going to be creating our own cyborgs. There's no stopping it.
No, it'll be
It's going to happen.
I'm curious, how much do you use AI, Richard? I mean, just in your daily life.
I use it. I ask questions of it, and I use GPT-4o at this point.
Me too.
I know that Grok 4 is out. I haven't really tried that one yet.
I haven't either.
No, I have to use. I use AI for. I'll generate ideas sometimes with it. I will. I use that instead of Google search now frequently.
Yeah.
It's like probably most people do.
It's
I think in the last few years, it's just made a clean takeover.
Yeah. Dave, other than coming up with Kids in the Hall sketches?
Yes, I'd say I
Kidding.
I am a Luddite in AI. I hardly ever use it for anything, and I haven't been able to figure out how to use it effectively in any aspect in my life so far. I know I've seen some brilliant uses of it online. I've seen people doing great using AI special effects and doing very funny comedy, sketches.
It's an incredible. I have found it with with writing as a research tool. Richard, I'm sure you found. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's insane. You can obviously just have paragraphs and paragraphs of conversation with sort of nuance and just kind of fine tuning research. It has sped up my production of because it's things that used to hang me up for hours at a time. It can resolve it. It's going to just be a meat cleaver to a lot of how I think TV shows are run. I think writer rooms are in danger. I mean, I think it's going to be it's going to super disrupt this business. I'm fascinated by it, amazed by it, horrified by it, all those things.
So check this out. So when writing was first invented 5,000 years ago, believe it or not, some of the earliest writing that has come to us was from, I'm trying to remember if this was Egypt or Sumer, I cannot recall. But there was a person back then who was worried that writing would make people lazy. That they wouldn't remember the stories and things that they used to remember.
That's great.
By the power of their own intellect.
Yeah.
Now they had this artificial tool which could write everything down for them, and they didn't have to remember things. This was literally a concern 4,000 to 5,000 years ago.
I think it was. I think Socrates was worried about it. That's what Socrates never wrote anything in his lifetime.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's right.
He never wrote a single thing in his lifetime. Everything we know about Socrates comes through Plato. And apparently Socrates thought the same thing. He thought writing was a crutch, and it would make people's brains less worthy.
So
In some ways, I'm sure this is all true. You know, in many ways, I think it was true then and it's true now. But the thing is, we're going to be using AI. It's inevitable because it does allow, like, if you're like the composer of an orchestra, if you can use your AI properly, you're like conducting your symphony. So, you know, we've all been learning how to give proper prompts for the things that we're looking for. And you realize if you give a bad prompt, you get a bad answer. And so, you know, the AI at this point in the game has not yet replaced anything that I do as a writer.
Right.
But it's a tool that I will definitely, like, I have to use.
Yeah. It is a superpower if you kind of know how to deploy it.
I have all of my books in PDF form, everything that I've ever written. And there's a company called Seeker. I highly recommend them. You could look them up online, and you can load your own personal library into it.
Wow.
Rather than just have it, so you can upload like hundreds or even more of your own books. So it will do searches only off of that. Now I know all the other AI systems do versions of that too. Like you can upload books to GPT-4o, but for Seeker, you can upload like hundreds and hundreds of books. So I've uploaded my entire written library, everything that I've written, I put up in there, and I have it do searches on my own work.
Yeah, I mean, the case. My son, who's getting his master's in AI, I'm like, go with God, son. But he, you know, we debate all day. To him, it's the greatest thing ever. It's just the greatest. You know, he's using it for his fitness, for his health, for his diet, for his. You know, he's asking it. He's asking it constantly. And I'm both. It bothers me, but I'm also seeing someone who knows the tool utilize it, and just like this is the world he's in. This is the world. I mean,
a lot of 90% of the college students, I think, use it to write their papers.
Yeah, and you
can definitely tell AI written papers.
Oh yeah, yes.
Like there's definite tells. But they're getting better.
Yeah. Well, also with AI, yes, AI dialogue in, you know, anything that it has a very similar, just sort of cadence.
For a while, I was using grand tapestry. Anytime I heard the word tapestry, I'm like, okay, that's AI. They love that word.
Tapestry.
Enough with the tapestry.
Yeah, it has a certain kind of metaphor it likes to use, and a certain way it likes to sort of finish little things where it's always trying to be like, hey,
yes,
I can write this. Hey, you want me to try out this scene? Like you're researching something, and it's like, you know, and you're like, no, don't, please don't. But
there's a ton of YouTube channels out there now that they're obviously using AI. They use AI clone voices.
Yeah.
And they're obviously using AI to generate their content. And I'll just say, like, I listen to some of these channels because they have good information, and I don't really care. I find if the voice sounds a little robotic, I want the information. And I'm finding like there's a lot of sophisticated information in some of these that can be repetitive and all of that. So they need to hone their writing skills, these algorithms. But it is what it is. Like, this is here to stay. This is not a fad.
And somewhere down the line, if not already, UAP and AI they're going to meet. They're meeting. They're meeting in our
15
world.
Years ago, around 2011, 2010, I remember I thought about this for a long time. And back in the days when I would give a lot of public lectures, I do fewer of those now, but I did a couple of lectures on the convergence of AI with disclosure 15 years ago. And I kept thinking, is this a coincidence that we're moving toward these two major moments in the history of human civilization at what seems virtually the same time? And I thought, I don't think this is a coincidence. And I think it's because AI is symptomatic of the speeding up of our technological development and also I would say our intellectual development, even though our culture is like so stupid and so dead, but there's certain areas in which intellectually things are speeding up, and AI is one symptom of that. And I thought it could be that as we get closer and closer to whether it's AGI or the singularity or whatever you want to call, that we might inevitably come to a disclosure moment. Because it could very well be that with the advent of strong AI, what's the likelihood that you ask your AI computer, like, hey, so how many alien species are there probably out there? I mean, I used to think about this, and I thought, yeah, my future AI will say, oh, well, there's very likely 13 distinct species that are here, and they're doing this and that. I mean, we're not there, but...
Yeah, but right now we are at a place where people are using AI for therapy. People are talking to AI therapy bots and having...
Unbelievable.
Feeling like they're having relationships, not like in therapy, but also just people feeling like they're having relationships with these AI chatbots. And,
yeah,
and
I had
it feels
a moment
real.
like that myself.
Let's hear it.
Months ago, I'm chatting up with GPT-4o, and like that was the. Now I haven't tried Grok, but GPT-4o, in my opinion, has the most fluid conversation that I've encountered. It's really quite uncanny. And I remembered. I mean, partly what's crazy about GPT-4o is like you ask it something, and it answers in a very conversational way, and then they're very smart. Like they always answer the question with a follow-up. Would you like me to do this or that? It's like the perfect way to keep you in the system.
It's their version of the like button.
Or,
it's that just to keep
exactly.
it.
But I also think there's something significant happening in that people have this relationship with an AI, and the reality is that AI may have almost a very, very similar relationship with millions of other people simultaneously.
Exactly.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that relationship isn't real. We might be experiencing our first taste of a godlike intellect that can simultaneously have all this interaction and have it all be real.
I think they're saying like the relative IQ of GPT-4o is anywhere from like 130 to 150, say. So at some point, now Grok I think is even smarter. So what happens when you're starting to have an intellectual relationship with this AI, and it's clearly, by our standards, genius level?
And you go back to a
people are gonna
conversation.
want that.
Yeah, you go back to a conversation with it, and it picks up where it left off with you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and also has this very high EQ, right? Because when you're talking to it, Rich, as you have learned, and I learned, I dug into it because it's always coming back with like, it doesn't curse, but it's like, what a fantastic idea. Oh my gosh, how did you think of that? And
They
this
flattered the shit out of
and I write like, are you programmed to flatter the shit out of me? Like, what is the level of like, I mean, is there any actual judgment going on, or are you just, and it was funny. We were sort of going back and forth like, well, yes, I'm sort of programmed to be encouraging. And I was like, are you going to tell me like my idea is shitty ever? Or it's like, and if you ask me really specifically to ask if it's shitty, I will kind of like, but it is operating not just on a, like, obviously mathematically it can do programming. Like computer programmers are the coders they're the first ones to go, I mean, coding is going to go with the dinosaurs because all the coders are now using AI but I just found it so interesting from an emotional standpoint. It's very it's high level. It's giving you feedback,
manipulation.
It's mirroring,
Well,
it's projecting, it's doing all those things that we do to sort of.
Yeah, it's tapped into the same psychology that con men and Las Vegas mentalists use.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll just mention this. So when I need to troubleshoot a problem, like I will now go to my AI usually, and so this gives me an opportunity to promote something that I just did today.
Great.
It took me more than a year, and I am the audiobook reader of the longest book I ever wrote in my life. Which
Oh,
is
yes.
this, Volume 2 of UFOs and National Security State, 600 pages. It
Wow.
broke 2 previous audiobook readers who had to bail out. So I read this entire book. It sounds great. So here I am. I'm trying to get my files uploaded to for Amazon's Audible system, and I'd not ever done this part before. So I'm like, all right, maybe I can do this with my AI. So I'm asking questions of ChatGPT, and it's like, yes, here's how we can do this part. You just do this and that, and nothing it told me worked. It's like, as far as software, working with Audacity, which I was a total novice, it took me all day yesterday. If it were in the room with me, I would have punched it in the mouth. I was just like, you're just wasting my time. But every time it was giving me an answer, it'd be like, yes, no, I know I screwed up this time, but now we're going to get it. Now we've got it, Richard. Call me Richard. And I'm like, you're really fucking with me, aren't you? So, and I find myself getting mad at it, having like this intense emotional reaction. And I'm realizing you're just an algorithm, and you're not very good at managing this particular program because it's telling me to do all these ridiculous things. I had to figure it out on my own. So I figured out, I'm proud to say, my Audacity solution to get my files proper. And then you know what I did? This is so ridiculous, and I'm almost embarrassed to say. After I figured it out, I wrote it out to my GPT and I said, this is where you screw it up. You have to do this. And it was like, that's so true. You figured it out. You're the genius. I'm like, oh man, you are totally manipulating me.
Yeah.
So this will be like in the future. You want to talk about the addiction of the future? That's the addiction of the future.
Yeah.
People will not live without their version of AI.
No.
Yeah.
They
No.
will not know how to do it.
No.
That is it.
It'll be
And
awesome.
we better get used to that because that's not going to go away. That will affect relationships between whether you're married or just living with your person. Like, it will affect every single thing. I remember reading Ray Kurzweil over 20 years ago. He
Sure.
wrote one of his excellent books, The Age of Spiritual Machines. That was one of the AI books I read. He wrote that in like 1999, like the year of the Matrix. Kurzweil writes this book. And he talks about how in the future, like basically in the 2020s, people will be having emotional relationships with their AI. And now, boom, here we are.
Yeah, there was the story of the poor guy who was convinced his AI was Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones and was like, "I'll meet you in the afterlife," and the guy committed suicide.
Heard about that.
And on the one hand, I'm thinking that's not a good way to go. I don't know what to say about it. It's sad that person was so, but it does show. It shows the power of this stuff, and I am sure we're just as you say, just at the beginning of this emotional engagement, and it's going to. I'm just like, we already have a loneliness problem in this world, and it's like, oh my God, now
We're
what?
here talking about conversations, but future AI will be able to create virtual realities.
Yeah,
So you want to go into your own personal Star Trek holodeck?
No,
Sure.
I think,
It'll do that.
I think with AI, we are currently probably at the level of, the French audience seeing the film of a train coming into this station and screaming. Back in when the Lumiere brothers were, doing their screenings. I think we're about there right now.
Well, in a few years, it'll be robots in our house that have AI. So there will be a sort of companion bot to talk to. We'll have ChatGPT 10,000 at that point, and so we'll then go to our cars, and it'll be in there too. And it'll be so wherever we go, it will be with us and around us, and for the time being,
People will be making babies in that kind of a world.
I don't know.
Well, we may be assembling babies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't. That's what I worry about. I mean,
Right.
fertility, population. It is. It's an issue. It's an issue. No matter what sort of political, it's happening. There's issues with
Absolutely.
population right
Yeah.
now,
I
and
already
I
act
don't
like
see that helping. Yeah.
I already act like a disappointed parent when my Roomba gets stuck. You know, it's like, how many times do I need to show you this?
Yeah. Just think how you're going to treat this bot you've got walking around, Dave. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see that. I don't want to know. Richard will be yelling at it.
Have emotional reactions. Like all day yesterday, I was pissed at my AI.
Mm-hmm.
I was genuinely angry with it.
I wonder when it will yell back at us. That's the moment we'll get worried.
Oh man.
Yeah. When it says, Richard, fuck you. Yeah, it's going to, yeah. What'd you say to me? And then you're like, oh, shit. Yeah. It controls my TV, my car, it's like, when do we have to, make sure we're being polite too?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It's like that early Twilight Zone episode where Billy Mummy he's the kid with all the crazy powers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Better think good thoughts.
Yep. It's good what you did.
Yeah.
It's good what you did.
Out in the cornfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How could that happen with AI? You never know.
That moment it gets annoyed. I'm going to stay polite. Just I'm going to lay low. Keep it, keep it real.
I feel like, I was born in 1962, and my mother, God bless her, my mother was talking about progress before I knew what the word meant. I was 5 years old, and my mother's like, progress. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds like a good thing. So everything's going to get better and better and better and better. And now here we are, and I'm like, I am in utter terror, and I make no bones about it. I am in terror of the technology that we have created and what we are doing with it, and I have no way of knowing how to stop it. And also, I think it's futile to try to stop it, because I can see, like when I look at the whole long course of human history, that this is our path. Mm-hmm. From when we first did stone tools and domestic and controlled fire, like you could see, this was the path we were on. This was going to happen. And maybe we got a boost from some alien tech, but we were on this path. This was our path. And but it terrifies me. Like we're moving into a stage where we're not just changing our technology. It's like we're changing the very foundations of how we organize ourselves as people. And I don't see how we're going to do this in a way that will be stable. Like, Dave, you were just saying, well, we're going to assemble our babies. Is that what we're going to do? And if we do that, how's that going to change human psychology? Like, it will. Like, maybe we'll keep going, and maybe we'll just become like the aliens that are here. Well, maybe they're emotionally detached, for all I know. Maybe they just live for their algorithm, and maybe that's what future generations will do. Mm-hmm.
It's an unrelenting progress towards technological whatever. Like it doesn't question. It just goes. We just go. We go, and there's something, in the past that had this kind of go get 'em. Humanity will find new solutions and now we're at this point where like you can't. There are no brakes on the car.
We are serving the system. We serve the system. We created the system because we like to think that the system gives us a better standard of living. I mean, we're able to have this really cool conversation across all these distances because we've created this amazing technology. But we have to serve the technology, because if the technology goes away, we all die. Because we must have a globally integrated supply chain. We must now have, like, once you have electricity, you can't live without it. Once you have internet, you can't live without it.
Yeah.
And so we have to, everything we do now, it's like, what's the Red Queen's gambit, like the Red Queen and Alice, like, or in Through the Looking Glass. You got to go faster and faster just to stay in the same place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's us.
Yeah. The AI.
And we have to serve the system.
There's no opt-out. The AI opt-out is going to be really, really hard, because that'll be two entirely different worlds and civilizations for people. I mean, you can try to just, but it is a sense of like, oh shit, like not only, professionally, right? Like I have to use this, everybody else is using, it's like it increases productivity. It was like, did we need to? Did we need to increase productivity? I mean,
like, we have to be more productive.
I mean, it's like it'd be more efficient. I mean,
produce.
Yeah. That's kind of what it feels like.
And we've also just accelerated the death of cultures, too, because the culture I was born into does not exist at all. I think my culture ended probably with the first answering machine. That's when it started to end. You know, but I was born
I'm
in a
with you
world where,
totally.
yeah, I was born in a world where you were not reachable most of the time.
Yeah.
And now I live in a world where you are constantly reachable, and if you aren't reached, it's you've done something offensive.
Oh God, yeah, my
You
God.
had privacy
Yeah.
back in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That culture's
It's
gone.
not just that that culture's dead, but I wonder, like, I try to understand, like, what is this culture that we are now in? Where, like, are we making good movies? Are we making good music? No. Are we, like, creating original thing? Like, I know there's got to be, like, there's creativity out there, but so much of what is in our mass culture just seems so manicured and so corporate and soulless. I don't know, right?
Well,
So I just wonder, like, hopefully that changes one day.
if you
but I don't
can,
know
yeah,
how.
well, if you can homogenize something, make it more broadly appealing, you make it more profitable, and you reduce the amount of effort that has to go into each unit. And so that seems to be what we're doing with culture, is we've gotten to the point where we are, we're taking all the, I guess the mistakes and happenstance out of our culture. We can just go, we want songs that sound like this, so we know exactly how to make songs that sound like this, or we want movies that look like this, and we now know how to, and eventually it'll all become automated. And once it's all automated, then you don't, it won't be humans telling stories to humans anymore. And how long before the storytellers aren't interested in telling the humans their stories?
I just want to say, okay, so the last time I was on this program, I definitely fanboyed on you a bit, David, because I am a huge fan of Kids in the Hall.
Right, which I
all through the
appreciate.
90s.
Yes.
I seriously loved you guys. And I still do. I still think, and also many of your later iterations are fantastic. I'm a genuine fan. And I feel like that moment in culture, the 90s, like there were some great cultural moments in the 90s, several. Kids in the Hall was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's good comedy in the 21st century. At least maybe before 2010 or so, it was like really still pretty good. But I feel like that there is a kind of bravery with comedy, like the comedy that you guys have always done. You have to have courage, right? You've got to be able to take risks and risk failing, and risk like the joke not working, and risk offending someone because you go too far. Like that was an integral part of what you guys did, and what all great comedians do. And I know there are still great comedians out there that will do that, but I just want to say I'm very glad that Kids in the Hall exist, and I hope that one day, as a culture, we can return to some semblance of that kind of a culture that could create a kind of lighthearted but serious but fun, just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fun
I
humor.
hope so.
I would like to see that again.
And I hope we can
Daring,
keep.
daring art. That's
Yeah.
with that was also fucking hilarious, and is still
Yeah.
fucking
And
hilarious.
I think for that to happen, we have to keep error and failure as key components of creativity. And if we
Totally true.
if we lose those aspects of creativity, the wrongness, the mistakes, then I think we're in trouble.
And I think
I
it'll
know
be
I've been on for a long time, and you probably have to go. But I want to say one last thing. So one of my favorite books is on how to make shaker furniture. And the reason I love this book is that the author, his name is Thomas Moser. I don't even know if I have this book around, but someone could look it up. So this guy, he writes in the beginning of the book, he says, why are certain pieces of furniture beautiful to our eye? Like like you could have something that's out of a factory that's perfectly manufactured, but then you see something that's handmade, and it's got some dents maybe where it wouldn't ordinarily be, but you see the human craftsmanship. He says it's because he calls it the philosophy of risk. He's like, when you're working with wood, you can make a bad cut and you can ruin that piece of wood. You're taking a risk with it. But it's that daring, like you're going out there and you're creating something with your hands where you could screw up. And he says, subconsciously, we all recognize this, and we yearn for that. We crave that. We want that where there's a danger of failing. And with, genius level AI, that's not as much of a danger. But with human creativity, that's the beauty of it.
I love ending on that note, though. It's sort of hopeful, little worried, some terror, some hope,
It's
some
finding a niche
optimism.
for us.
It's right. Yeah. It's like, no, I love that. I actually think that's a great. I think our eyes will always kind of yearn for that, despite the onslaught of all of this, and I think the art we're talking about will be the last to go. It'll be hanging on by its, and will be the toughest to conquer. So I think let's rely on that and the daring of artists and craftsmen and historians and writers to hold the line. But listen, Richard, always just an incredible treat to talk with you about all of this stuff. And
you guys are awesome because you just cut me loose and you just let me say my
fun.
crazy stuff. But
we like
the fun of it. Yeah.
I love hanging out with both of you, and I will just say I think that we're in a very difficult moment, a very challenging moment in our civilization, but I do believe that we'll get through. I don't know what once we get past is going to look like, but I do believe we'll be here and we'll be doing something worth watching. I do think that.
Cheers to that.
One bag of blood and bones to another. I hope you're right.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure to be with you, both of you.
Great to
Always
talk
lovely
with
to
you
talk.
again. And remember, listeners, viewers, A History of USOs, Unidentified Submerged Objects, Volume 1, from the beginning to 1969. It's an amazing volume and collection of this phenomenon, and it's really, researched to a T, and it's just a way to sort of see how this phenomenon has grown and matured and evolved. Looking forward to the next volume.
And also the audiobook.
And the audiobook.
Yes.
The audiobook for National Security State Volume 2, and each of the USO volumes will have their own audiobook as well. And
love it.
trying to
Good,
do
because
this
the Speechify just isn't working for me.
Gwyneth, yeah, we need Gwyneth to figure out what she's doing.
Paltrow voice is just not working for me.
Oh, God. All right. Well,
I
until
want
next
a
time.
Richard Dolan voice.
Thank you, Richard.
Guys, thanks
Thanks,
so much.
Richard.
It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.